you know what this is about, right? So we meet once in a month. You are not supposed to answer. So we meet once in a month and we talk about technology. So this month we picked up Elixir because some of us were working on it and we just wanted to see how the community is and all that. So we'll start off with an introduction, Shrushrut. So he would be giving the introduction to Elixir, followed by a hands-on session which will be done by Navneet. So yeah.
This is the first time I'm coming here. So if you can just tell what's your name and what tech stack you work on. So I'll just cater my talk based on what experience you have and what you expect out of this.
Hi, I'm Jijesh. I'm working in a startup called Sostrom. Our tech stack majorly on Golang and AngularJS and frontend. And
Yeah, I'm Sudarshan. My tech stack is like front-end technologies plus Python and PHP.
Hi, I'm Sindil. I'm working in PayPal and my technology is on Java, Haskell, JavaScript, Node.js, those two.
Hey, I'm Nabil and I work for Eventify, it's a startup. And our stack is mostly on Python, AngularJS.
I'm Dheeraj Babu. I'm working in Aruba Network. Now it is part of HP. And mainly I work on front end.
Yeah, I am Vilesh. I work for Bosch. So we are working on embedded domain, mostly complete embedded domain.
Hey, I'm Saurabh. So I'm working at a startup called Roadrunner. And so yeah, primarily working on Ruby and Rails.
Hey guys, I'm Priyank. I work at Sahaj. My tech stack is a bit varied, but this is my first time doing Elixir. Quite excited to learn about Elixir itself.
Hi, I'm Suraj. I work at Sahaj. Currently, I'm working on Elixir along with Navneet and Athira. So I've been working on Elixir for about maybe 1 month. So before to that, I was working as a mobile developer on both Android and iOS.
So I'll just briefly tell about myself. I just graduated from Britsmoa this year. Because of the no attendance policy there, I haven't been to a single class. And because of that, I started learning these web technologies and all that. So I've been working with startups, remote startups and all for the past 4 years now. So like most of you, I started with Ruby, PHP, JavaScript. Then I went on to some game development in C#. Then I came on to Elixir Erlang. And now I'm also working with native script like for cross-platform mobile applications. So basically what piqued my interest in Erlang Elixir is, you must know the story of WhatsApp, right? They have over 1 million users now and just 50 engineers. The main benefit is the code and the structure and all is so scalable that the programming style is so efficient that you don't need so many people to handle communications and server infrastructure and all. So basically, like now what I'll do is, I think very few of you have introduction to functional programming, right? So I'll just get started off with what function programming is and on how you can come from a Ruby background, Loops background to start with functional programming. So basically Elixir is a functional programming language that compiles its code to Erlang bytecode that runs on the Beam virtual machine. So Beam virtual machine is like JVM, but a few differences like how in Java you have the garbage collector has Java has a shared heap topology. So basically each process or each thread that you create use the same resources from the same heap. But Erlang and Elixir, they have micro lightweight threads. So each thread has its own set of resources. So the thing is, if one thread gets spoiled or it shuts down, it's not going to affect the other threads. So basically, the main motto of this is fault tolerant systems. And one of the main features is if you check out the telecom infrastructures and all of them have been built on Erlang. And Erlang was developed by Ericsson in 1980s. So basically, their motto was 9 nines, which is 99.99997 times uptime. Basically, in a year, the system can go down for less than a fraction of a millisecond. That's the motto. and it has a lot of features like hot swapping. In any call have you ever heard the software is getting upgraded, so please hold on, never, because Erlang has a unique facility wherein you can change the production code without affecting existing users. So if I'm on a call and Vodafone decides to upgrade its infrastructure, they can change the upgrade its code, they can change the production code without interrupting even a single call. So because of these features and fault tolerant designs, it has been widely adopted by widely adopted by huge industry players, and with Elixir coming in recently, it has attracted the Ruby guys also. So at first glance, Elixir might look like it's Ruby only, but it's far away from Ruby as you can imagine. So only the syntax, first half an hour you'll feel like it's related to Ruby, Python and all, but soon you'll realize it's a very different world. The function programming world is a totally different world. So we are just one of the another reasons why functional programming languages gain in precedence nowadays is if you check out the processors have maxed out. Basically now maximum processing capacity per core is maxed out. What they do now is just increase the number of cores. So basically, and memory is very cheap now. So basically you need systems that are able to scale. Like I put in another server, it's going to scale approximately 2x times. Basically, I need systems that scale just by adding new hardware, and that's only possible with functional programming as of now. Java has introduced few things like actors and all those, with which you can achieve what Erlang does for the past 20 years. But yeah, basically, this one of the jokes that show how far ahead Erlang was of its time. So how do I query the database? And everything here is Erlang is focused on distributed systems basically, and the coming slides, coming talk and Navneet's talk, you get an idea of how you can create fault tolerant, huge availability systems in a short amount of time. So the first thing is difference between functional programming and functional programming and non-functional. So functional programming in one sentence is where your function does not depend on any outside data or outside storage. So basically, for any given input, the output of the function should be same. If you check out the first sample where I'm just incrementing a number, this is JavaScript example, so it's taking the a value from outside and incrementing it inside. So every time I call the function counter, it's going to give a different return value. So this is not a functional program. But on the other hand, I have a counter function that receives a value and increments that and returns it. So when the output is only dependent on the input values, that's a functional program. I won't take much time. I will first quickly go through the basic operators and all that. So first you have the AND. This is just a simple logical AND, but with a short circuit basically. So if you have X and Y, if X is false, it immediately breaks the check of the other things. So short circuit is basically during execution or check, the first encounter of any false or any statement, it stops the execution and returns the result. So if I do X and Y and X is false, then immediately it won't execute, it won't go to AND Y part. So, and similarly for OR, and you have set of other operators and all, and I suggest you open the Elixir docs. You won't find how you find for Ruby and all Stack Overflow, every question you'll find, just Google, you'll find an answer. But for Elixir and Erlang, since it's relatively new, you will have to depend on the documentation. So I suggest while I'm giving the presentation, you guys keep the Elixir docs open. If you just Google Elixir docs, you'll find it. And so even the function call syntax is similar to Ruby, wherein if there are no arguments, you don't need to put in any parentheses at all. And I'm just going through this and I'll show you how to create structured programs and use the tools and all. So basically you have a couple of types. So you have types in Elixir which are similar to an Erlang if you have done Erlang, but the usage and implementation is slightly different. So you have atoms here which are constants, or how do I say? So So atoms are like, can you open IEX? Have you all installed Elixir on your machines? Just do install Elixir if you have Mac. We'll just have a brief glance at this, like we'll be covering all this again. So basically, here we have system of tuples and it's going to be difficult to explain what this is, just like how the implementation is just by looking at this. But just have a glance of how you can, like what is a tuple and what is an atom. So your strings and anything you enclose in double inverted commas, those are strings. And anything you insert in a single inverted comma, that is an atom. So at the end of the day, your nilpura, that also gets converted to an atom. And you have for the list, it's just like how you have arrays in Python, or you have a list here. But the implementation and the usage is slightly different here. And this is the most important part where you'll have to unlearn what you learned in the first standard. So you usually learn equal to means assignment operator, but here equal to doesn't mean an assignment operator. Here it's some like match operator. So basically what happens is, I do x equal to 1, Elixir checks if I can assign the value of 1 to x. Like it checks for a match. Only when it matches is it going to assign the value. So you'll find the importance in pattern matching where I can match tuples. So I have hello world 42, which is a tuple. Inside the tuple, I can have elements as atoms, strings, or anything. Like it can be any type. And basically, what happens in pattern matching is when I do A, B, C equal to this hello, it doesn't assign it directly. So for each element in, like it first goes to A, it checks if A, hello can be assigned to A, if world can be assigned to B, and 42 can be assigned to C. If it's possible to assign the values to the left hand side of the pattern match, only then it will assign the values. So basically, if you can open IEX on your terminal, just type along and play around with it, because till now we have been focusing on loops and everything, and to get into a functional paradigm, you'll have to learn the patterns and all. There are no for loops and nothing, so you'll have to get accustomed to the patterns here. So just play around with whatever you can type in IEX. So just create a tuple, try to assign it to like another tuple. So basically what's going to happen now is if you type in A, B, C to hello world 42, then type in A, it's going to print hello. If you type in B, it's going to print world, and if you type in C, it's going to print 42.
What is that colon? Hello? What is that colon?
So if colon and some characters, it's an atom. Atom. So it's a type in Elixir, atom. So basically, either it starts with colon and some characters, or the characters are enclosed in single inverted commas. So those are atoms.
It's equivalent to symbols in Ruby.
Yeah, symbols, exactly. So basically now if you try A, B, C, hello world 42, since it's able to match all elements on the right hand side with left hand side, you'll get A, B, C and A, B and C values. But if you do A, B 42 and A, B 43 and hello world 42, you'll get an error. Because what Elixir now is doing is A it's able to match with hello, B it's able to match with world, because A and B haven't been assigned. But if instead of C I type in 43 here. It tries to match 43 with 42. Since the match is not possible, the entire match of like assignment fails. So like if you can just try it out, different examples of it. Because this very crucial in pattern matching is extremely crucial in how you compose functions and all. Write clean codes. This is one of the most crucial parts of like, in Elixir and Golang. And your lists, like how it's implemented, actually your list has a head and a tail. So even this is also pattern matching. So when I do head tail 1 to 3, what it does is head gets assigned the first value in the list, and the rest of the list gets assigned the value tail. And this is just additional info basically. I don't need to keep A, B, C always. If there are some variables that I won't be using in the system, I can just put in underscore there instead of the variables. So that just the underscore just defines that anything can be here, but I don't need that thing. And all match, this statement should always have the functions only on the right hand side. The left hand side can only have the basic Elixir type, so that it's either a tuple or a list or anything. So now moving on to strings. Strings are basically UTF implementation. And there's a slight difference between in Elixir between quote point and byte. So if you check out the hello over here, the L has 2 dashes over here, right? And the quote point for that hello is I think the L is I think 322 or something. So basically I can specify any character if the bytecode falls between 0 to 255, but if it exceeds 255, I need 2 bytes to represent that. Basically now, even though hello is just 5 characters, if you try out byte size this hello, this L, it's going to give you 7 bytes, because each L will take 2 bytes, because that L character can't be represented in regular 0 to 255 wala format. And here you have binaries. So binaries are just a sequence of bytes that you enclose in the double arrays. And you have the string concatenation. So what string concatenation does is it actually converts it into bytecode, into a binary string, and then just merges it. So if you do for concatenation, you have like in I think Python you do just plus, right? Plus I don't know. But in Elixir you do, for strings you do this, like less than, greater than, and for lists you do plus. So if I have a list 1, 2, 3, and I do plus 4, 5, 6, it's going to give me a new list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the most important part to write beautiful codes in Elixir is the pipe operator. So I'll just quickly I'll show you how to use the Elixir command line. So you can create a new script called demo.ex. So you have 2 modes in Elixir. One is when you create a file with the extension .ex, it just gets compiled. But when you create and load it into the code, but if you have a .exs, that is a Elixir script that gets run after it gets compiled. So it runs like how you run Python space something.py. If you have .exs, you can do Elixir space something. Basically, you can create a new script, create a new folder, create a file called demo.ex. So those familiar with Linux will know, have an idea of what the pipe operator does. Basically what pipe operator does is passes the previous value as the first argument for the function. So what happens now is my add function has 2 arguments, A and B. But here if you see I'm just doing add 2. Because now what happens is when I use the pipe operator, 1 pipe add 2, what happens is the previous value is 1. 1 gets carried forward as the first argument in the add function. So basically this becomes add 1, 2. You can just try it out. Just write a function add AB. So here you define functions with def and end it with end. So basically just create a function that adds 2 numbers. and just save the file. Just write the add function, add a comma b, and save the file. Just the add function and save the file. Now if you, I'll also do it when it include. So now you have demo.exe with this content. Just type in Elixir C. So Elixir C is a tool provided by Elixir only to compile Elixir files. So just type in Elixir C space the file name. Now if you type in ls and c, your directory will have a bean compiled bean file. So what Elixir C has now done is compiled your Elixir code into bean bytecode. So one way to call your add function, now after you compile it and see the bytecode, type in IEX. So IEX is the interactive console for Elixir, like how you have Python, in Ruby you have IRB. So in this you have IEX. So if you type in IEX in any folder, Elixir is going to load all the generated bytecodes into your code path. So basically, if you, after compiling the file, if you type in IEX, you'll be able to use the now the thing is, you can't have, like I forgot to say this, you can't have a function in Elixir without a module, right? So I'll basically cover the modules later, but just to show an example, what you can do is, so the module name, let's keep it as demo. And here you don't have the return statement. The last statement of the function is the return value for that function. So basically now I have this with me. You can just type it out on your systems also. And after you combine it with Elixir C space your demo.ex, load the console with IEX. In Erlang, the way you define functions is function name slash arity. So arity is the number of arguments that the function accepts. Like how you have method overloading and all in Java. Here you can have the add function. The add function can take in 2 variables, 3 variables, depending on what arguments you provide. So basically, I can have something like there. So basically, the way Elixir will tell about this add function is add slash 2 because it accepts the arity 2. The other function would be add slash 3. Basically, based on the number of arguments you provide to a function call, the particular function is going to be chosen. If I do add 1, 2, 3, 4, Elixir finds out that there's no function definition that accepts 4 arguments, it's going to throw an error. So you can just try one. Now if you load IEX, just type in demo.add 1, 2. Or like anything. Is there any problems? Just let me know. Like this very basic, but like is very crucial to what Navneet will do. So yeah, that's what you need to enclose all your functions in a module. So just do code that.
How did you load the file into the IEX?
So when you type in IEX, hit enter, it automatically loads all the bytecodes compiled in that directory.
Okay.
Like, just to get started off, this one of the easier ways. Just compile the file, type in IEX, you'll get it.
So I have a .ex file. How do I compile it to?
Elixir C. C space your file name. No, Elixir C. Elixir.
Okay, one.
ELX. Yeah. ELIX. C. Yeah, you got the bean file. Now if you type in IEX, it's going to automatically include the bean file into your code path. And IEX has auto completion, so if you type in now demo dot, uske baad if you hit tab, it's going to show you the functions available.
Right.
So if you have add a comma b and add a comma b comma c, it's going to show you add/2 and add/3 over there.
Correct.
But
The
you need
/2 is the arity, is it?
Yeah, so the way you define a function is function name /arity. So arity is the number of arguments that a function accepts. So let me know if all of you got to this point, where you are able to see add/2 and add/3.
Interested
Let me know after you reach this one.
I'm interested in change it as a cost of second. So इसके लिए divide करके देखते हैं.
Meanwhile, those who are no, this warning you can actually ignore since like you compiled it again, right? Yeah. So basically, no, it's no problem. This warning is basically it has already found the bin code over there, but and the same file you are compiling again. Like there is no issue at all. Those who have completed in the meanwhile, just check out tuples and add the types in Elixir, the dogs.
Divided by 2 in
We can't see much from here.
Can you increase the font size?
Yeah.
Little more. This also.
This one?
Yeah, I'll just see from
Yeah,
there.
let me.
This should be better. Better than before.
Increase the font size.
comma 2. This gives me the result. Now if I want, so my procedure is what I want to do is take a number, add something to it, multiply it by some other number and square it. In traditional, like Ruby and all, what you will do is nested functions. So I get the output of this, put that in another function call, put that in another function call. Basically that leads to very unreadable code once you have a set of functions that you need to call in a procedure. Basically another way is I have one here and demo.add 2. What's happening now is the pipe operator puts in the previous value that it gets as the first argument for the next function. This wouldn't be very clear now why it's helping me, but now if we just nest it even further. You see the equivalent of this in any other language would have been demo.add. Basically the pipe operator, this statement actually is equivalent to this, where you pass in the result of the first function into the argument of the second function. That result gets passed on to the third function. So you see when this size increases, the code is going to be very, very unstructured. But on the other hand, here you are able to see what exactly is happening. The steps is I have 1, I add 2 to it, I multiply it by 2 and I square it. But the same thing that's happening here, by looking at this, you won't be able to get at the first glance what's happening. The pipe operator basically is very essential to writing clean, structured, maintainable code. So just play around with using the pipe operators, but keep in mind that it always gets assigned as the first argument. So just create a few dummy functions, just get used to it. Use case of pattern matching in functions. So now what I'll do is, maybe my add, I have one add function, suppose it gets, basically if I get a tuple instead of a comma b, basically now, if I want to send something like demo.add 1 comma 2 comma, basically anything, there can be anything. But basically, I should be able to do demo add in tuple. I should be able to do 1 comma 2 comma 3, or also demo add 1 comma 2 comma 3. Basically, these kinds of examples are where pattern matching comes into use. So I can use pattern matching in my add function. So I have add function def add. Now I can write a pattern map. So what's happening is, maybe I want a tuple that instead of add a comma b, maybe I have here just a comma b comma c. So now when I do def add now, this is going to be add /1 because this accepts just one argument. On the other one, I'll just create this one. my calculate function, both the functions have the same arity. Both are calculate/2. But based on what arguments I pass, Elixir is going to choose a different function. If you can just type it out and open IEX. So now I have demo dot calculate. So one function has the first argument as a tuple, and the second argument as something else. The other function has the first argument as some value and the second argument as tuple. So based on what value I provide in my function call, so if I have 1, 2 and 3 here, it's going to take the first function, wherein the first argument is a tuple and the second argument is something else. Now if I do this is going to call the other function. Basically what Elixir is doing is based on your input parameters, it's trying to match a function that can be called. Now basically when I type in a tuple 1, 2 and then 3, it goes from top to down and see and checks which function does it match the arguments with. So for that arity it's going to pattern match each function available and take the first function that's there. So basically, like this is the basic example of how pattern matching is used in function. Then you have a few things like guard clauses and all. Like I'll cover that right. But basically, this is like the core of pattern matching. You can try out a few other examples where maybe I pass in 2 numbers here and here. I will just show how even you use atoms for pattern matching and all. Now calculate. Both the calculate/3, they both accept the same kind of parameters, some value and some atom. Right? But now based on what atom I provide as a third argument, a different function is going to be called. So if I have demo.calculate 1, 2 and I'm saying multiply. It's going to multiply, but I put an add over here, it's going to add the same values, because what it's doing is in my function call I wrote calculate 1, 2, the atom multiply. So it first matches with this function. But on the other hand, if I have the atom as add, this match fails. So it goes to this function and checks if a, b and add matches, and then it executes the add function. Basically, these are the basic use case scenarios for how you use pattern matching in function calls. Just let me know if you have any queries or.
Can you type that demo.calculate in a command? Actually, suppose if you're passing 2 arguments, for add method, if you take 2 arguments or 3 arguments, means in that if suppose in the command you type demo.add tag means it will tell demo.add/2, demo.add/3, like that it will tell, right? In command prompt, if you type for add method, like demo.add tag means it will tell that
all the array functions that are available there.
But for calculate also we are having 2 methods.
It will give only 3.
Can you show that?
If there's one more, I'll remove this. So this will be. Basically basically I have the same calculate slash 3 now. I'll just get 1 here.
It will show only one.
One function, but the function that gets chosen is going to be based on pattern match that's available there.
Okay.
Different number of arguments are different functions, but same number of arguments with a different pattern match falls under the same function. Is there any other queries to be done? So, before this, I'll just go through anonymous functions. Basically, how in Ruby you have lambda, right? So you have something similar here. I can create a function x equal. So basically, my add function was def add. It took 2 arguments and returned a value. I can also create an anonymous function that accepts 2 values. So maybe a comma b. This returns a plus b. So this is my x. Basically what I'm doing is the syntax is fn, the argument list or whatever it is. It might not even accept any arguments. Dash greater than and your expression, whatever you want to calculate. Maybe call a function there, do any calculations, and then end. And this gets assigned as, this I have assigned to x now. Now if I want to call the function, what I'm going to do is x dot bracket 1 comma 2. Basically what we're doing is calling the anonymous function x and passing it the values 1 comma 2. Yeah, and another way to, one way to write anonymous functions is using fn. Another way is using function captures where you use the and syntax. So we check here. So you have mat.0 as a regular one. It is not there. So I have, instead of x, I can do and right. Give me also an example of actually, I'll cover that right. Basically, instead of writing fn dash and defining the function like that, using and 1 and 2, you can by default capture the variables that have been passed on.
Tell more about what exactly the and translates.
Yeah, that's what, like, I'll cover it again. But basically, like,
So
I'm
the
trying
syntax
to
is
ampersand bracket and
ampersand 1 plus
For-
ampersand 2. In case you're taking
yeah, so it is ampersand bracket में function name slash arity. That's one way to do it, or you can write the calculations. So I'll just show an example. So I pass in a here. What I can do is does this work? So this is like the most basic example. So what this is doing is, instead of me writing function taking in x but adding 1 to it, what this is doing, this is called function capture basically. Now and 1. So what and 1 is the first argument for that function. Similarly, you'll have and 2 and 3 and so on. Now if I have,
So what is the first ampersand
so that,
before the
yeah, that defines, that says that this is a function basically,
Okay.
function capture. So basically now I can have something like and 1 plus and 2.
that means this takes 2 arguments.
So this doesn't say how many arguments it takes. So basically, this expands to whatever the number of arguments you provide. Like that function call.
So even in the second one, if I send 3 arguments, will that execute properly then?
Yeah, so basically when you send in 3 arguments, what's going to happen is it's just going to get 1 and 2. So I think it's going to execute properly.
Even if
Huh?
Because the arity of that method is 2. You're passing it with
Okay. Okay.
So you have to always
Yeah, so maybe
match.
the
There also
maximum number of
pattern
and
matching works.
yeah, so basically the maximum and value that you have is the number of arity, like number of arguments that you can assign. So now I can do wide.
1, 2, can you try with 1,
Yeah, that will. Basically and, so this is something I'm learning now. Basically and with your maximum number is going to be the arity of that anonymous function. So let's just go with one simple example. Just try to print 1 to 10, not using a for loop because you don't have that here, but using a recursion. If you can just write down the actual code because that's going to be very helpful. With all the OOP patterns that you have been learning for the past 10 years, it's going to be slightly time consuming to wrap your heads around function programming patterns. Basically here my function, there's something called guard clause. Like how I have pattern matching inside the arguments, the function gets chosen based on the arguments that I have passed. The function can also get chosen on the guard criteria. So I can have when n less than equal to 1 function gets called, maybe when n less than 2 some other function can get called. So I can basically have guard clauses to each function to check whether that function should be called or not. Another way to execute Elixir scripts is you write in the module and save it as something.exs, and you can run it directly by typing in Elixir space your file name. So you don't need to do .ex, compile it, load it into IEX. I can.
So what's the difference between the two?
So .ex just gets compiled and loaded into your code path, but .exs actually gets executed after getting compiled. So like how in Python you have the script, it's similar to that. Basically what's happening here now is when I run print multiple times, passing the n value as key to Elixir passes from top to bottom, it first goes to this function. The arity matches, everything is fine, ideally it should run. But I have a guard clause that says run this function only when n is less than 1. So the first function doesn't get executed and it moves on to the second function. In the second function, like how regular recursion works, you reduce 1 and call the same function again. So at the end, when n actually gets to 1, the first function gets executed. So just try, this very crucial, try a few examples with guard clauses. Google, check out guard clauses in docs. There are only predefined set of functions that you can use in a guard clause. Like when is integer n, is binary n, very few functions are there which you can use in a guard clause. So I suggest playing around with an example that uses pattern matching, recursion, guard clauses.
What clause?
So the guard clause, guard clause. So basically just play around with something that uses all recursion, pattern matching in this guard clauses.
Those are runtime.
This one, .exs.
No, I'm saying if the guard doesn't match or if the guard
Yeah,
is
there are no
false.
functions, then yeah. if there are no functions that matches, so if I have both n less than 1 and n less than 2, by passing ms to, then it won't match any function, so it will throw an error. Add.list as list, what's going to now happen is I can call all the list functions without actually referring to list. So square, flatten and all that, I don't need to type in list.flatten. I can directly type in flatten. Basically alias helps me to reduce the cut down on the code size basically. And
Import and
yeah.
require.
Yeah, so basically here all your Elixir modules get converted to the namespace elixir dot some module name. So even though your module name is demo, at the end of the day the bytecode reads it as elixir dot demo. So your function name is elixir dot demo dot something, because elixir has interrupt with Erlang and Erlang calls your function names as elixir dot something. So your demo function, the demo module, when you call it, is actually an atom. So demo is actually in single inverted commas elixir.demo. So here if you have list.flatten, so basically in that module if I now use list.flatten, it is actually mat.list.flatten. But if I use elixir.list.flatten, it's going to remain the original elixir.list.flatten because the parent namespace for everything is elixir over there.
So what's the difference between require, use?
Yeah, wait, that's what I'm.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, you use alias to just use cut down on the code. Basically, use the functions in a module that you don't have to write the function module name again and again.
So alias is used when there is no need for you to have the entire thing within your.
No, when you don't so I have a module demo. Okay, I have the module demo. In some other module, I'm constantly using the functions of demo like demo.add, demo.multiply, demo.subtract. I don't want to keep writing demo again and again. So what I do is in that module, where alias the demo module. So I can directly call add, subtract and multiply in that module without typing in demo.add.
Okay.
That's the use of alias.
Then when you say require.
So require just make sure that that particular module is available to your module. By default, every module in that code path is available to every other module. But require is just the way of ensuring that this module is available while execution for this module.
So in terms of execution, will this be heavier compared to alias?
So there's no difference basically. By default, all modules are available.
Then why do we have to use require?
Because if you want to do some function, some module uses some function. When I push the code to server.
For example,
yeah, so
for alias you gave an example of demo.
Yeah.
Now can you give something similar for require? So
Yeah.
now we are in demo module.
Yeah,
There is one more module called demo 1.
Correct.
Now how do we use require?
So basically, it's a way to ensure that my demo the other module is included in my application part. Basically.
Demo 1 is included in demo.
No, demo is included in demo. So if in demo 1, if I do require demo, it's going to make sure that demo is already compiled and available to use in your demo module, demo 1 module.
Okay.
So basically what require does is make sure you can use your module functions in your other module.
So generally, right, it's used only when you have macros. So if you don't have macros, you don't need require. If you try to use a logger module, right, logger module, all the info, debug, error, everything is a macro. So if you want to use it, you will have to require logger before you use it. Right?
So,
if you don't have macros, you can directly use the logger. Right? The modules are available, but macros are like compile time. So you require it, it just inline the code. So that's the only reason why you need it.
If you check even this def is a macro. What's happening back is it converts your if I require a particular file, it might have a few instructions to basically if I have some function in or some statement in my demo 1 module, and that demo module uses that function to convert to something else. Basically, only when I use the require statement can that macros be expanded. If I am using what you said, logger may I have permission to log to the console and all. To use the macros that logger provides, I need to require the logger module in my, because even though logger is available at compile time, it won't be expanding the macros. It's going to throw an error. So if my code uses something that has been defined in my parent module for compile time, like macros, and maybe you'll cover macros, that's when you need require. Without require, all your programs will work if you don't have any macros. But if you have some code that gets converted to something else during compile time, you need macros and require that module.